Good morning, everyone. How are you this fine day? Welcome. It is the this is the fourth Bible story. This is Thursday Bible story. We're doing this, and I'm West Tennessee Dave, live to you on Twitch this morning, starting at 6:30 to read the next part 4, story of Abram. And we're not gonna just recap everyone. If you see the other ones, please and watch those. So, welcome, glad you're here. We've got a pretty decent lineup for reading today. We have a short little story followed by a pretty lengthy section for the story of Abram. So, started. Today we're going to be reading Genesis 11, parts of Genesis 11, and Genesis 12 through 6. Genesis 11. At one time, all the people of the world spoke the same language and used the same words. As the people migrated to the east, they found a plain in the land of Babylonia and settled there. They began saying to each other, "Let's make bricks and harden them with fire." In this region, bricks were used instead of stone, and tar was used for mortar. Then they said, "Come, let's build a great city for ourselves with a tower that reaches into the sky. This will make us famous and keep us from being scattered all over the world." So the Lord came down to look at the city and the tower the people were building. "Look," he said, "the people are united. They all speak the same language. After this, nothing they set out to do will be impossible for them. Come, let's go down and confuse the people with different languages. Then they won't be able to understand each other." In that way, the Lord scattered them all over the world, and they stopped building the city. That is why the city was called Babel, because that is where the Lord confused the people with different languages. In this way, he scattered them all over the world. This is the account of Terah's family. Terah was the father of Abram, Nahor, and Haran. And Haran was the father of Lot. But Haran died in Ur of the Chaldeans, the land of his birth, while his father Terah was still living. Meanwhile, Abram and Nahor both married. The name of Abram's wife was Sarai, and the name of Nahor's wife was Milcah. Milcah and her sister Iscah were daughters of Nahor's brother Haran. But Sarai was unable to become pregnant and had no children. One day Terah took his son Abram and his daughter-in-law Sarai, his son Abram's wife, and his grandson Lot, his son Haran's child, and moved away from Ur of the Chaldeans. He was headed for the land of Canaan, but they stopped at Haran and settled there. Terah lived for 205 years and died while still in Haran. The Lord had said to Abram, "Leave your native country, your relatives, and your father's family, and go to the land that I will show you. I will make you into a great nation. I will bless you and make you famous, and you will be a blessing to others. I will bless those who bless you and curse those who treat you with contempt. All the families on earth will be blessed through you." So Abram departed as the Lord had instructed, and Lot went with him. Abram was 75 years old when he left Haran. He took his wife Sarai, his nephew Lot, and all his wealth, his livestock, and all the people he had taken into his household at Haran, and headed for the land of Canaan. When they arrived in Canaan, Abram traveled through the land as far as Shechem. There he set up camp beside the oak of Moreh. At the time, the area was inhabited by Canaanites. Then the Lord appeared to Abram and said, "I will give this land to your descendants." And Abram built an altar there and dedicated it to the Lord who had appeared to him. After that, Abram traveled south and set up camp in the hill country, with Bethel to the west and Ai to the east. There he built another altar and dedicated it to the Lord. Worship the Lord. Then Abram continued traveling south by stages towards the Negev. At that time, a severe famine struck the land of Canaan, forcing Abram to go down to Egypt, where he lived as a foreigner. As he was approaching the border of Egypt, Abram said to his wife Sarai, "Look, you are a very beautiful woman. When the Egyptians see you, they will say, 'This is his wife. Let's kill him. Then we can have her.' So please, tell them you are my sister. Then they will spare my life and treat me well because of their interest in you." And sure enough, when Abram arrived in Egypt, everyone noticed Sarai's beauty. When the palace officials saw her, they sang her praises to Pharaoh, their king, and Sarai was taken into his palace. Then Pharaoh gave Abram many gifts because of her: sheep, goats, cattle, male and female donkeys, male and female servants, camels. But the Lord sent terrible plagues upon Pharaoh and his household because of Sarai, Abram's wife. So Pharaoh summoned Abram and accused him sharply. "What have you done to me?" he demanded. "Why didn't you tell me she was your wife? Why did you say she is my sister and allow me to take her as my wife? Now then, here is your wife. Take her and get out of here." Pharaoh ordered some of his men to escort them, and he sent Abram out of the country, along with his wife and all his possessions. So Abram left Egypt and traveled north into the Negev, along with his wife and Lot and all they owned. Abram was very rich in livestock, silver and gold. From the Negev, they continued traveling by stages towards Bethel, and they pitched their tents between Bethel and Ai, where they had camped before. This was the same place where Abram had built the altar, and there he worshipped the Lord again. Lot, who was traveling with Abram, had also become very wealthy with flocks of sheep and goats, herds of cattle, many tents. But the land could not support both Abram and Lot with all their flocks and herds living so close together. So disputes broke out between the herdsmen of Abram and Lot. At that time, Canaanites and Perizzites were also living in the land. Finally, Abram said to Lot, "Let's not allow this conflict to come between us or our herdsmen. After all, we are close relatives. The whole countryside is open to you. Take your choice of any section of the land you want, and we will separate. If you want the land to the left, then I'll take the land on the right. If you prefer the land on the right, then I'll go to the left." Lot took a long look at the fertile plains of the Jordan Valley in the direction of Zoar. The whole area was well watered everywhere, like the garden of the Lord, or the beautiful land of Egypt. This was before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. Lot chose for himself the whole Jordan Valley to the east of them. He went there with his flocks and servants and parted company with his uncle Abram. So Abram settled in the land of Canaan, and Lot moved his tents to the place near Sodom and settled among the cities of the plain. But the people of this area were extremely wicked and constantly sinned against the Lord. After Lot had gone, the Lord said to Abram, "Look, as far as you can see in every direction, north and south, east and west. I'm giving all this land, as far as you can see, to you and your descendant, as a permanent possession. And I will give you so many descendants that, like the dust of the earth, they cannot be counted. Go and walk through the land in every direction, for I am giving it to you." So Abram moved his camp to Hebron and settled near the oak grove belonging to Mamre. There he built another altar to the Lord. About this time, war broke out in the region. King Amraphel of Babylonia, King Arioch of Elasar, King Kedorlaomer of Elam, and King Tidal of Goam fought against the King Bera of Sodom, King Birsa of Gomorrah, King Shinab of Admah, King Shemeber of Zeboim, and the king of Bela, also called Zoar. The second group of kings joined forces in Sinim Valley, that is the valley of the Dead Sea. For 12 years they had been subject to King Kedor Laomer. But in the 13th year they rebelled against him. 1 year later, Kedor Laomer and his allies arrived and defeated the Rephaites at Ashtaroth Karnaim, the Zuzites at Ham, the Emites at Sheva Kiriathaim, and the Horites at Mount Seir, as far as El Paran, at the edge of the wilderness. Then they turned back and came to En Mishpat, now called Kadesh, and conquered all the territory of the Amalekites, and all the Amorites living in Hazon Tamar. Then the rebel kings of Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, Zeboim, and Bela, also called Zoar, prepared for battle in the valley of the Dead Sea. They, they fought against King Kedor Laomer of Elam, King Tidal of Goam, King Amraphel of Babylonia, and King Arioch of Elasar. 4 kings against 5. As it happened, the valley of the Dead Sea was filled with tar pits, and as the army of the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah fled, some fell into the tar pits, while the rest escaped into the mountains. The victorious invaders then plundered Sodom and Gomorrah and headed for home, taking with them all the spoils of war and the food supplies. They also captured Lot, Abram's nephew who lived in Sodom, and carried off everything he owned. But one of Lot's men escaped and reported everything to Abram, the Hebrew, who was living near the oak grove belonging to Mamre, the Amorite. Mamre and his relatives, Eshcol and Aner, were Abram's allies. When Abram heard that his nephew Lot had been captured, he mobilized the 318 trained men who had been born into his household. Then he pursued Kedorlaomer's army until he caught up with them at Dan. There he divided his men and attacked during the night. Kedorlaomer's army fled, but Abram chased them as far as Hobah, north of Damascus. Abram recovered all the goods that had been taken, and he brought back his nephew Lot with his possessions and all the women of their captives. After Abram returned from his victory over Kedorlaomer and all his allies, the king of Sodom went out to meet him in the valley of Sheva, that is, the king's valley. And Melchizedek, the king of Salem and the priest of God Most High, brought Abram some bread and wine. Melchizedek blessed Abram with this blessing: Blessed be Abram, the God Most High, creator of heaven and earth, and blessed be God Most High, who has defeated your enemies for you. Then Abram gave Melchizedek 1/10 of all the goods he had recovered. The king of Sodom said to Abram, Give back my people who were captured, but you may keep for yourself all the goods you have recovered. Abram replied to the king of Sodom, I solemnly swear to the Lord, God Most High, creator of heaven and earth, that I will not take so much as a single thread or sandal thong from what belongs to you. Otherwise you might say, I am the one who made Abram rich. I will accept only what my young warriors have already eaten, and I request that you give a fair share of the goods to my allies, Aner, Eshcol, and Mamre. Sometime later, the Lord spoke to Abram in a vision and said to him, Do not be afraid, Abram, for I will protect you, and your reward will be great. But Abram replied, O sovereign Lord, what good are all your blessings when I don't even have a son? Since you've given me no children, Eleazar of Damascus, a servant in my household, will inherit all my wealth. You have given me no descendants of my own, so one of my servants will be my heir. Then the Lord said to him, No, your servant will not be your heir, for you will have a son of your own, who will be your heir. Then the Lord took Abram outside and said to him, Look up into the sky and count the stars if you can. That's how many descendants you will have. And Abram believed the Lord, and the Lord counted him as righteous because of his faith. Then the Lord told him, I am the Lord who brought you out of Ur of the Chaldeans to give you this land as your possession. But Abram replied, O sovereign Lord, how can I be sure that I will actually possess it? The Lord told him, Bring me a 3-year-old heifer, and a 3-year-old female goat, and a 3-year-old ram, a turtle dove, and a young pigeon. So Abram presented all these to him and killed them. Then he cut each animal down the middle and laid the halves side by side. He did not, however, cut the birds in half. Some vultures swooped down to eat the carcasses, but Abram chased them away. As the sun was going down, Abram fell into a deep sleep, and a terrifying darkness came down over him. Then the Lord said to Abram, You can be sure that your descendants will be strangers in a foreign land, where they will be oppressed as slaves for 400 years. But I will punish the nation that enslaves them, and in the end they will come away with great wealth. As for you, you will die in peace and be buried at a ripe old age. After 4 generations, your descendants will return here to this land, for the sins of the Amorites do not yet warrant their destruction. After the sun went down and darkness fell, Abram saw a smoking firepot and a flaming torch pass between the halves of the carcasses. So the Lord made a covenant with Abram that day and said, I have given this land to your descendants, all the way from the border of Egypt to the great Euphrates River, the land now occupied by the Kenizzites, Kadamites, Hittites, Perizzites, Rephaites, Amorites, Canaanites, Girgashites, and Jebusites. Now Sarai, Abram's wife, had not been able to bear children for him, but she had an Egyptian servant named Hagar. So Sarai said to Abram, The Lord has prevented me from having children. Go and sleep with my servant. Perhaps I can have children through her. And Abram agreed with Sarai's proposal. So Sarai, Abram's wife, took Hagar, the Egyptian servant, and gave her to Abram as a wife. This happened 10 years after Abram had settled in the land of Canaan. So Abram had sexual relations with Hagar, and she became pregnant. But when Hagar knew she was pregnant, she began to treat her mistress Sarai with contempt. Then Sarai said to Abram, This is all your fault. I put my servant into your arms, but now that she's pregnant, she treats me with contempt. The Lord will show who's wrong, you or me. Abram replied, Look, she is your servant, so deal with her as you see fit. Then Sarai treated Hagar so harshly that she finally ran away. The angel of the Lord found Hagar beside a spring of water in the wilderness, along the road to Shur. The angel said to her, Hagar, Sarai's servant, where have you come from? Where are you going? I'm running away from my mistress Sarai, she replied. The angel of the Lord said to her, Return to your mistress and submit to her authority. Then he added, I will give you more descendants than you can count. Then the angel also said, You are now pregnant and will give birth to a son. You are to name him Ishmael, which means God hears. For the Lord has heard your cry of distress. This son of yours will be a wild man, as untamed as a wild donkey. He will raise his fist against everyone, and everyone will be against him. Yes, he will live in open hostility against all his relatives. Thereafter, Hagar used another name to refer to the Lord who had spoken to her. She said, You are the God who sees me. She also said, Have I truly seen the one who sees me? So that well was named Bir Lahai Roy, which means well of the living one who sees me. It can still be found between Kadesh and Bered. So Hagar gave Abraham a son, and Abram named him Ishmael. Abram was 86 years old when Ishmael was born. Just pause, listen for a second, see what really stirred my heart from that beginning story, the story of Abram. And this is not the last we'll see of Abram. We'll definitely talk about his story more my next reading, whenever that may be. All right, so this is part 4. This is the story of Abram. And I was thinking about this. I guess the Spirit's just been talking to me about this the last few days. Something I've kind of never seen as I've read the stories here, the beginning stories of Scripture, right? So we had the creation story. That was the first one. Then we have uh, the next part, which is Adam, Eve, the first family. Um, Paradise Lost, if you will, and then we'll start to multiply on the earth, which was God's command to people. But in each of these stories, starting with Adam and Eve, then you even see it with Cain, and see it with Noah when he's done with his journey. And then you see this with the Tower of Babel, which we started with, and now you're seeing it with Abram. Everyone in their story, everyone so far, has been moved moved from their location. Like their physical location has changed because of oftentimes God's in God's encounter with that person or by God's directing, right? In so many ways. And we as people here in America, we like to think of ourselves as like really good people and really advanced in our thinking and everything else. We have the ability to move around to like new homes, new places very easily. Probably much easier than it was for them back in the day, who were riding camels and donkeys and everything else to move possessions, whatever they have, right? And I'm sure they have nowhere near the possessions that we have today. But they're all being displaced from like whatever their homeland was at the time. Um, Adam and Eve get kicked out of the garden; they have to move, right? Cain has to disperse because of his killing of Abel. Noah, because of the wickedness of earth and God's plan, gets the boat moves him to wherever it just lands at the end of the day, right? And then we have the Tower of Babel. They're all in one place. They're all doing this thing. They're like, let's build this thing and so that we won't be dispersed. Like it's literally so we won't get moved around the earth, right? And like the storylines so far have been God is moving people on the earth, which is really funny. I just never kind of seen that part of the story. And then the first moment we meet Abram after his father Terah dies is um, Abram, move. Like it's again like this story. There's this story of moving because of situations that God has set up or because God wants us to move, and it's or even our own choices sometimes, but like people move, they have to move. And I think to find our place in our stories, sometimes we have to move physical locations. Um, and it might not be a great distance or anything like that. Um, there's this theme of moving, right? It's moving from one location and one like mindset, if you will, of thinking to take a journey with me, right? Go to this place and he's gonna go with you, and then we're gonna start a new thing, like this fresh experience, right? And I think that's important, not just physically, but mentally, spiritually, right? Like, if you want to, like I'm trying to do some better things for my health this year and do some working out, which I really don't like working out, okay? But in order to do it, you have to move. You have to move your body. You have to do things. You can't just stay seated in a wooden chair or now a nice harder chair with some cushion to it. We have to move, right? Does that mean we're moving all the time? Sometimes that's part of our journey, right? Some of us have a gypsy lifestyle. Okay. For those that don't know some of my story, um, I live in West Tennessee now. I lived in Middle Tennessee for 5 years, and then we sold our house, and we got bought a big fifth wheel, and we lived in the fifth wheel and traveled the country for 2 years with my 4 kids. We had a kid while we were in the camper. It was such an amazing journey. I loved it. I loved it. But we really didn't have like a home base that you're used to, and sometimes it's totally okay. Like we each have to learn to find peace in those places, right? But as I see this story, it's like there is this huge part to me just reading this first part of the journey, uh, that God asks us to move from one thinking, from one place, from one strategy to the next. And yeah, so let's leave it at that for right now, I guess. Let's leave uh, Abram's story at that place because we're not done with this story. Normally we wrap up story, but this was a lot of reading. Abram's story takes up a lot of chapters. Um, and just as like a little history lesson, right? I was looking at this earlier, and from chapters 1 through 11, if you look at it from a actual timeline perspective, if you take that all literally, it's like 2,000 years of time, right? The rest of the book of Genesis, which will be a number of chapters, is only going to take 4 generations of people, for the most part. So it like time slows down, we get more of the story, and that's because as you um, as you tell stories, right? The further back a story goes, the less details you remember of it, right? So we just don't have as many details of the earlier stories, but we start to get a lot more details of people's lives, um, here in with this starting with the story of Abram, um, of when they started recording it down, I guess. To think about, I have zero knowledge base in my own family tree line of something that happened 2,000 years ago. I have like I I have a little knowledge base of stuff that happened 200 years ago. Okay, but very little, right? Um, the reason is maybe I just didn't understand like listening to storytelling that's one of the reasons I'm telling these stories now. Like the reason we keep learning about something or it stays alive in memory is we tell the story about it, right? And to hear the stories, to tell the stories, to tell it to the next generation so that they will know. Sometimes that's written down, like in the Bible, so that we can read it. Sometimes it's just what we need to do with our families, right? So to have that information, um, to tell the stories to our kids, to our grandkids, to listen to the stories of our parents, our grandparents, so important, right? That's why we're doing this. I don't know. I don't know. For me, in my own personal journey, though, I have moved actually a few times, and definitely sometimes at the direction of God, because it wasn't really on my radar. He made it on my radar, right? and some of us move a lot. But there's stories. There's stories of others like that. There's stories in the Bible like that. So maybe when we get to those stories, they're just hopefully they'll fire your heart in how difficult it is, because I do think that our hearts long for something. Well, I do think we all long for stability in our lives, right? So, um, thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Appreciate I appreciate the community that's always been around my streams, but even more the community that's come around this new content area. And I know it's maybe not a time frame that all of us are used to, but we're getting there. Getting there. Thank you. Have a wonderful, blessed day. Hopefully, I'll see you guys Sunday. And until then, good luck in your journey. Stay warm. Stay present to your story and whatever season that looks like, whether it's moving to a new place in your mind or somewhere else, or if it's something else. Be ready for that. And yeah, I will see you guys again soon.